exactly what Alba's talking about, like her daughter. Like, think about her daughter, maybe living in another totally different house and, having these little things happen here and there and maybe just forgetting them and just growing up as an adult and being pushed down some certain route. Maybe she had a little bit of in her and being like, oh, I want to help people. I'll be a nurse, all these things. So like, there's like a piece of her that's never really been, that's never really been seen or accepted because the parents just didn't know how to accept it. It's nobody's fault. It's just that like the world that we live in doesn't like accept that does, hasn't necessarily been completely set up. It's to accept all these parts of ourselves, right? It's like we're these like little beings that come from this like really loving place, and all of a sudden like we show up on earth and we're like, what the shit, like what is this, like why did I even come here? We're so much nicer over there, it's so much nicer up there, right? So it's, we're going to lose like pieces of ourselves. And this week is about, being able to reclaim and accept whatever pieces, and they're going to be different for all of us, that feel like they've kind of been gone. And really just the conversation of accepting um, these gifts, right? Like accepting your spiritual gifts, and not being afraid to be persecuted on the other side, not being afraid to whatever, in whatever way you want to use these gifts, like as simple as if you want to, you know, use it on your children, if you want to use it in work, or if you want to use it in conversation, you want to be able to be with a partner and be able to, like yesterday I was sitting with my husband and I was like, I feel like you need a reading. And he's like, I don't need a reading. I was like, yeah, no, like there is, and I can share. And I was like, this is going to happen. And then he's like, yeah, no, I know that's supposed to happen. And you could tell that, like, just by having this like quick little intuitive conversation without him thinking I'm crazy, he's able to, confirm some things that he's feeling within himself. And we're able to like interact intuitive beyond like what is being able to be seen and all that. And neither of us are judging ourselves, but we're also not changing our whole lives, right? We live very normal lives. And that really is, the hope for all of us, that we're able to not be afraid to come out of like this spiritual closet in whatever way that seems scary for us. It's like the fear of coming out is going to be different for everyone. There's like different things that we're going to be afraid of. So if you have your notebook today, I was hoping we can start there and just simply asking ourselves a question of, when it comes to my own spiritual gifts and these things that are, bubbling up inside of me, what am I most afraid of? So just kind of asking ourselves, gently taking a minute to ask yourself that question. It from your heart, try not to go into your head. So if you need to take a breath into that heart, into that green chakra, and then allow your hand to be connected to the heart and write out that response. So that's a very interesting point. So, overall, like, our greatest fears is just so human, right? It's like this idea that we're going to be kicked out of our tribe, that like, because we depend on our tribes, like we can't, live alone. We have to live within like tribes. So there's always like that, we go all the way down to the bottom, really. That's why rejection is so scary, all that. But you did say something that is interesting to mention. It's something I experienced also. So you were saying like, it kind of like, to me, it sounded like you were saying like, well, if I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to, try to do this work and try to like develop these intuitive skills, my fear is that like, I'm not going to be good enough for it. And I think that is like, that is such a important thing to touch upon. 'Cause I remember experiencing that. I remember being like, well, if I'm going to take risks, which I've been taking risks since I can remember, I really always put this pressure on myself to make sure that risk pans. Like if I'm going to take this risk, like it better work out, like, and which adds like a layer of pressure, and it actually like stops us from being able to develop whatever we're trying to develop. It's like, well, if I'm going to tell my parents that I'm not going to be a doctor, but I'm going to be an artist instead, I better be a damn good like artist. I better, but then that feeling of needing to prove myself is actually the thing that makes me like a not successful artist. So that's a very common feeling, and just being able to see that, to be able to know that, if I'm gonna, you guys deserve to take this risk because you're feeling called to it. Like, why are we not allowed to follow things that we feel called to do? Like, why should there be any other explanation other than the fact that like my heart is bringing me that way? Like, that's it, right? They shouldn't, again, this is a process of learning to self mother again, so like if we're going to use Elba's daughter, she's our spirit animal, as an example, if she was saying that she wanted to pursue something, like we're going to let her pursue it whether she's good at it or not, right? So like she just feels like she's supposed to go into this direction. So if this little 2 year old, this little 3 year old, is telling us these things. So the same thing, like we have to love ourselves in that way, that like we don't know where this is taking us, or where, what it means, but my heart is bringing me there. And the fascinating thing about like anybody that's good at anything, like if you've seen an artist or an athlete or whatever, the first step is like you have to be like excited about it. You have to be like passionate about it enough to like follow it. And that's going to get you so far. And then after that, it's just practice, right? Like it's the person that practices the most that's going to get there. So in many ways, like if you want to be good, let's say, you're going to be good. You know what I mean? Like it's not, but you don't need to be good. You want to be good. And there's like a difference between that. Like your survival doesn't depend on being good because like it's the only way to prove yourself, right? Like you are safe because you are safe, and not because um because you're good at this thing. So really like learning for us to like love ourselves on that, and to just start being okay with, if a little of my little daughter, whether I have one or not, told me she wanted to pursue something, I would never tell her not to pursue it, right? So I'm going to love myself that way also. So another thing is to remember that this is not like our first rodeo. All of you have had many lifetimes. Most of you have, all of you have done this for many lifetimes. Many of you have been witches and like murdered for this stuff before. And now you're coming back at a time where it's more accepted, right? Like a lot of us are picking up where we left off, and many times I have that very strong understanding that like I was gathering people for a long time, dead, and then came back to like be like, I'm gonna do this again, and here I am, and I'm in this place that like I'm safe. Nobody's gonna come and get me other than like, maybe a troll or some religious group or something like that. But other than that, nothing's gonna happen to me.